What's going on, everybody? Well, we are wrapping up our long Alien review series. Say hello to Durbin. Durbin, say hello.
Hello, Cody Leach people. I'm excited to be back on Cody Leach's channel and to finally bring a conclusion until the next Alien movie to our long Alien franchise reviews. Cody, this has been a blast, seeing as how I've never seen these movies before, and you gave me good opportunity to see these movies, so if you want to check out our reviews, the odds are on my channel, the evens are on his channel, and let's dive into some Alien Covenant, man.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun. So Alien Covenant came out this weekend. You can find both of our spoiler-free reviews on our respective channels, as well as soon enough our Alien rankings. Now, let's get into some spoilers. This was a really hard review for me to do without talking about spoilers, because a lot of the things that I really liked and a lot of the things that I really didn't like, I kind of had to keep tight-lipped about. Did you have that same problem?
Yeah. Oh, I did, and I did, my spoiler-free review live. It was my first ever live video. And so normally, like, when I'm doing a spoiler-free, if I find out I'm doing something spoilerly, I could go back and edit it. I had to really, censor myself as I was talking, doing it live. It was very difficult.
Yeah, I had to redo, 4 or 5 spots in mine because I kept saying things that I felt were too spoilerish. So then I'm like, how do I say this and have it be vague, but not have it be too vague where it doesn't make sense? So yeah. It was difficult. Well, go ahead and give me your, 1 or 2 sentences, your overall thoughts on Alien Covenant.
Okay, 1 or 2 sentences.
Or 3 or 4.
I really enjoyed this. I had a lot more fun with this than I was expecting. And I had some expectations, which we talked about in our Prometheus review, things that I wanted to see. And I didn't get all that I wanted to see, but I think I got enough of what I wanted to see that I was happy.
Gotcha. Okay. My quick little synopsis on my thoughts on Alien Covenant is that I think it was a better made movie than Prometheus. I think it was a little bit more cohesive and it was a lot more enjoyable for me to watch than Prometheus. At the same exact time, it was about 100 times more frustrating for me than Prometheus. Now, as far as the positives, I'll let you go first. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot more than I have.
Well, that's true. I might. Wow, putting me on the spot. There's a lot of positives for me, though. I mean, first off, it was just in the characters, like Danny McBride. I think a lot of people are saying this, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but he was a huge surprise for me, and it was really cool to see him be dramatic. So I really enjoyed watching that side of him and seeing him not only just pull that off, but pull it off well. He did a really good job in his role, the way he was so worried and scared about his wife. So when his wife died in that super action-packed, intense scene that I was on the edge of my seat, I had that extra emotion where I had that empathy for Danny McBride. This guy's gonna hate getting this news. And the way he dealt with it, the way he stuck with his duty even afterwards, I don't know. I just had a lot of respect for Danny McBride in this movie and the way he pulled it off. I will jump right now into my greatest positive because it's just the forefront of my mind. Michael Fassbender. It was amazing to see this movie open up with him as David and talking with Guy Pearce and going back to the questions of the origins of life that were raised up in Prometheus, which for me was the most interesting thing about Prometheus. So the fact that we opened this movie with what I found to be the most interesting thing about Prometheus was a huge positive right there. Like Prometheus, we didn't really dive too much into the origins of life and things like that, but we did dive into, these engineers made these aliens and made that goo, and that goo was part of a biological weapon. I still have no idea why they were mad at humanity. That's probably a negative for me in this movie, is I do wish, since we were going back in time, we got a little bit more about that. Why were they mad at humanity? What did we do to offend them? Why did they want to wipe us out? I wish we got that. But it was cool to watch David unleash the plague on the engineers. It was cool to see, his anger. It was cool to watch his story unfold and what happened to Elizabeth Shaw and how they brought that back into it. And at first, she died in the wreck. And then you find out, oh no, this has a lot more malice to it. David is now considering himself a little god, and he's trying to create life. And other life is expendable at his ability to create something in his image, the way his master created him in his image. But then to see David with Walter, and so you had Walter show up, who was a totally different personality, same make, different model, different personality, and to watch Michael Fassbender portray those two radically different characters was so above and beyond fascinating. The process of where facehuggers came from, that I wanted answered from Prometheus, the way they bridged that gap and gave us the missing link that it's David doing these genetic experimentations because of his own God complex. And I'm sure I'll get into more positives as you talk, but those are the things that are on the forefront of my mind that were so intriguing to me as we got into this movie.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll comment on some of those a little bit later. As far as my positives, I think yet again, a lot of the big positives we had for Prometheus are just as, if not a little bit more, well done in Alien Covenant, as far as like the camera work, the special effects, the cinematography, the score. I like how they kind of mixed the Prometheus score with the Alien original 1979 score, and it didn't feel like it was jarring when it changed. It felt like it fit the scene for it to be Alien score in one scene, and it fit the scene to be a Prometheus score in the other scene. I thought that was really cool. I like the look of the planet. It looked a lot more Earth-like than I was expecting from something like that, because all the other planets we've gotten in this are like wastelands. So that was neat. I did like Danny McBride's character. I'm not quite as high on him as everybody else, because I feel like the praise is just coming from the surprise that Danny McBride has that
and you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah. My praise towards him does come from that surprise. Yeah. I genuinely liked his character, but I can't help the fact that I was surprised.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the praise is coming from, is, wow, Danny McBride can actually act. So that's cool. And he did do really well. I'm curious to see more from him in that. Michael Fassbender does do incredible. I couldn't talk about him being David in the spoiler-free review because I was afraid I was going to give away too much. But him being David and him being, Walter? Him being Walter was very cool. And even though I don't necessarily like the scenes themselves that they're in, seeing them two kind of back and forth and kind of interacting with each other was really fascinating. I also liked how gory and how intense the movie got whenever it really wanted to go there. Like whenever things first start hitting the fan, the movie really goes there. It doesn't really pull a whole lot of punches. I like that aspect of it. That was what was really missing in Prometheus for me, was like the old school sci-fi horror from Alien and Aliens. The horror aspects that they try to put into Prometheus just kind of was question raising, like the weird zombie guy and stuff like that. So that was really cool. I did like the fact that we got a little bit more explanation of where the xenomorphs came from, but that it's a really missed opportunity positive for me, and it's one of my biggest negatives, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But I did like the direction that they took that as far as trying to explain that. And that's about it for my positives. Now,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, diving into the negatives?
Yeah, if you don't mind, go ahead and start.
Why don't you go ahead and start? Because I think I had a lot more fun with this movie, and I'm sure you'll trigger some when you go.
Yeah, so as far as my negatives, now, like you were commenting on how cool it was to see that David had like this God complex, and he was doing all these genetic experiments, and that's where the xenomorphs came from. When it reached that point of the movie, I was like, okay, that is really cool. That is surprising. I wasn't expecting that. That's really interesting. Show me more of that. And they skate past it in about 3 minutes. They just basically say, David created them, now let's move on. And that to me was so frustrating. I'm like, you made me spend an entire movie in Prometheus and the entire first 45 minutes of this movie in this life, creations, philosophical, scientifical conversation, and then you finally get to the meat, the cornerstone of this story, of the entire purpose of these prequels, showing where the xenomorphs came from, why they were created, how exactly they came to be, where the egg came from, and they just kind of skate past it. You're supposed to accept it. That really bothered me. I wanted to see like 30 to 40 minutes on that. And I know, and I addressed this in my review as well, that the rumor right now is that his next movie is going to take place between Prometheus and Alien Covenant, so maybe that's going to be the story direction there, but I really don't want to see that, so that's not going to be...
I don't want to see that either.
Yeah,
it kind of... I don't know if this is to counter what you said, but I actually get what you're saying, and as you're saying it, I can see that. It's like, oh yeah, that is the meat of it, is seeing that he was trying to raise these aliens, and then we did skate by that into way more action and less philosophical thinking. But it's interesting to me the way this movie ended with David on the ship and him putting the facehugger embryos where the human embryos were and things like that. Mm-hmm. I feel like we are open for a third prequel movie that comes before Alien and after Alien Covenant. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we are open for that, but it felt like there was an opening left. And I feel like the ground that you're talking about can really be covered more extensively if they do another one. And that was kind of just my feelings walking out of this. And again, I didn't know how much to say in my spoiler-free review, but it was just the way they ended it with David on the ship putting the alien embryos where the human embryos are. I just went, crap, we did not end with them on the desolate planet where the movie Alien picks up. We have room to do probably at least one more movie in between, and honestly, I'd be kind of curious to see what they do with that.
Yeah, I'd be curious too. I walked into this movie expecting it to be a part 2 of a trilogy or possibly even a 4-part movie leading up to Alien, so I wasn't expecting them to wrap up right at the beginning of Alien at this one. But what frustrates me about that, and it was the same problem that we were kind of talking about with Prometheus, is that, whenever this whole big picture is finally done, that grievance that I have might not even be there anymore because I'll know exactly what happened, and maybe the whole 3 or 4-part movie will answer all the questions. But as a standalone movie, when I'm watching it, the question just frustrates me, and we had the same problem with Prometheus. It's like, well, you raised all these questions and you didn't answer hardly any of them by the end of the movie. Maybe you will later on, but that still doesn't change my experience in this 2 hours. So that was a big problem for me. The other biggest problem I had was that this movie was marketed heavily as an Alien movie. There's xenomorphs on the posters, there's xenomorphs in the trailers. Most of the TV spots is only about the xenomorphs. And to me, that section of the movie is about maybe 30% of the movie. And it didn't really get started until like the last act. And when it did get started, it felt like it was rushed. Like, it feels like, to me, they really start betraying the rules and the lore of their own mythology. Like, whenever they have the facehuggers come out, and Billy Crudup's the first guy to get it, and then the chest burster, if you want to call it that, because it's not really a chest burster, comes out, and it's not the chest burster that we know. It's a mini xenomorph, and then it does this weird scene where it stands up, and to me it looked like the little tiny xenomorph from Spaceballs. It just looked so out of place, and I'm like, that's not a chest burster. What's going on? And then in like 3 minutes later, it's a full-grown adult. Like, I know the time was kind of close in the first Alien from it bursting out of the John Hurt's chest to being an adult xenomorph, but it seemed like that entire process from the facehugger to the chest burster to the alien xenomorph took about 5 minutes in this movie. And even whenever the adult xenomorphs were running around, I never really felt like they were that much of a threat in this movie. Like, the first Alien and the second Alien and even the third Alien, and even to Alien Resurrection to a degree, they were like this looming threat. You had to do all these things to kill the alien, and it just seems like the characters that were left at the end of this movie to battle the xenomorphs never really had that big of a struggle. They took one of them out really quickly with that crane, and then the one that was left over, they blew it out of the airlock, which, again, how many times can you blow an alien out of an airlock? And you were talking about the scene with David, to get away from the xenomorphs a little bit, you were talking about the scene with David, the big surprise at the end that, oh my God, this isn't Walter, this is David. I had a huge problem with that because
I saw it coming a mile away.
Yeah, and so did I. And that was the biggest that was the biggest issue, is that I don't think they could have telegraphed it anymore if they tried, but it just didn't make any sense because they, like 2 minutes before that happens, they establish right in the movie that Walter is stronger, he can heal himself, he's superior, he's smarter, he is the upgraded version of David. And then they show the one shot of David touching a knife, which he's already stabbed him through the throat, so how a knife is going to be more deadly to him than whatever he did before makes no sense to me. But then all of a sudden, they cut to the ship landing, and they cut back, and David, not Walter, is running out of this little cathedral, so he had time to finish cleaning up his hair, because his hair was a lot messier and a lot more raw cut than Walter's was.
Cut off his own hand.
Yeah, he cut off his own hand, change clothes, make sure that his facial scars match Walter's, and then run out. And then that was really far-fetched to me. And then, and I know I'm rambling, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of just going and going.
You're fine. You're fine. You're good.
But then the other problem that I had with that, and the whole problem with the whole twist, is that these characters, even though I liked some of them, are the dumbest characters I've seen in this franchise. And, I'll wrap back up with the David scene, but like right away, you've got an entire journey. You've got a ship, you've got billions of dollars, you got 2,000 colonists, you have a space crew, you have scientists, you have a terraforming expert, everybody trained and planning to go to one specific planet. And then they make a beeline and go to another planet in about a drop of a hat because it sounds interesting. They go to the surface of the planet. They don't have any protective gear, no like spacesuits, no breathing apparatuses, nothing. They just go, touch everything, breathe everything in.
I actually thought of Galaxy Quest, where the guy's like, "There's no air." I mean, you don't know. Like, I thought of that scene instantly when they were out there. And I was like, okay, I guess you. I'll buy it, but whatever.
Yeah, so then they do that, which to me is stupid. It's like, okay, you're the ones who are going to bring apart the next phase of humanity. You're all retarded. So then they do that. And then, then David shows up out of nowhere, which you have absolutely no reason to have a living person or a android on this derelict planet. There's bodies everywhere, and they just saw aliens. And he's like, come with me. And they all follow him and don't ask a single question. They just, okay, cool. And not only that, they were searching around that entire planet for about 2 or 3 hours and didn't find a single thing. David walks them 5 minutes from their spaceship, and they find this massive cathedral. And it's like, how the hell did you miss that earlier? And then wrapping up back where we are on David, and then I'll let you talk, and I apologize again. But
I don't mind.
We get to the very end, and everyone knows that David is doing something sinister. David is a bad guy, and Walter's the good guy. So whenever Michael Fassbender comes back out, and they've been through all this hell, they've gotten rid of the xenomorphs, nobody takes a second to question whether or not this is Walter or David. Nobody asks, Mother, is this David or is this Walter? Nobody does anything. They just assume until the very last scene when she talks about the cabin, and all of a sudden she's like, oh my god, it's David! Yeah. And I'm like, are you serious?
Yep.
So, rant over.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. The parts where I definitely agree with you is the stupidity of this crew, because I kind of get that they're trying to establish they were afraid to go back in the pods. I mean, you had James Franco, who got burned alive.
Why was he even in this damn movie? Why was he even in this movie?
I don't know. Maybe he was just an Alien fan and wanted to die in an Alien movie. I don't know.
Yeah, he got his wish.
But it was just hilarious that they killed James Franco before he even gets a line. But I can get where, okay, so through this, they're trying to establish they're afraid to go back in the pods. They're afraid to go back into their hibernation. I do get that. But I agree with you. The motivation being, hey, that planet looks nice. I know we have this training, and I know the other planet was thoroughly vetted, and this is very suspicious that this planet has a distress signal, and we never had it in our data. But, hey, let's just go and see if we can colonize there, because we don't want to go back into hypersleep. Stupid. Yeah. That was the stupidest thing ever. And what would have better served this movie is if they went back to Alien, where they went off course for a distress signal. They're like, well, it's our responsibility to investigate that. And if that was the debate, and if that was the reason, because they did get a distress signal. They got a human song. They saw some images of, like, Numi Pace, or is it Rapace? What's her name?
Yeah.
But, yeah, they saw some images of her, and they knew, like, see, just to say this might be a person in distress, and since we're trying to start a new life, it's our duty to go check this out. That would have been far better than, wow, well, we don't want to go back in the cryotube, so why go to the planet we planned? Let's go to this one. Like, that kind of made me mad. Mm-hmm. But, like, so I get that. I totally understand that. And the whole David thing was very predictable at the end. Like, I saw that twist coming about a mile away.
Yeah.
But I found, even though I saw it coming a mile away, and even though we find out the twist that it's David, I'm like, well, that's not a surprise. I mean, anybody with half a brain would be watching this and know that David is dead. You broadcasted that. Okay, that's not David. My
Walter.
gosh, I'm getting it mixed up. That Walter is dead, and that this is David that is now on the ship. I mean, that was so utterly and blatantly, obviously, David. But it didn't bother me half as much as I kind of expected, because I was just, that whole scene with the alien loose on the ship, the only thing that I went, oh man, was the airlock thing. I was like, gosh dang it. I mean, I get it. Why do you have to do it? Why the airlock again? Why the airlock? Can we just be a tad bit more creative in how we kill the aliens? But those, I don't know, that wasn't enough to, like, really ruin things for me. And something else that you were talking about too, like, I enjoyed the build-up. I enjoyed the fact that it was the second half of this movie that was more like the Alien movies. I enjoyed that because I liked it connecting to Prometheus. And Prometheus was more philosophical, more thinking. So I enjoyed the first half of this movie following that, and being more philosophical and more thinking. For me personally, that kind of built it up more. It kind of brought me deeper into the story. I enjoyed seeing that connection to Prometheus. I enjoyed a little bit of the look of the engineers, and then I enjoyed diving right into what we know and love from the Alien franchise in that last act, because it just made it even more of a payoff for me, and it really felt like that connection point. So, I mean, Prometheus exists, and as much as many people may not like it, we now have to build that bridge, just like Alien Resurrection had to build that bridge between Alien 3 and what they wanted to do next. This one was in a similar position. It had to build that bridge. And even though not all my questions were answered that Prometheus raised, I still enjoyed that they built that bridge, that they acknowledged Prometheus' existence, that they tied it in, I think, in my opinion, so well. And then the last half of this movie being that alien thing that we know and love, where it was violent, where it was gory, where it was intense, where it was creepy, where it was all that stuff. I really enjoyed how they constructed it that way.
Yeah, I get that, and like I definitely didn't want them to just kind of throw away Prometheus. You know, I expected them probably to spend at least the first 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes into it. But what kind of made it rough for me was it felt like the first 30 minutes was kind of like a retread of the first 30 minutes of Alien, and to a degree the first 30 minutes of Prometheus, where you're learning about the crew, and they're on this mission, they get a distress signal, they decide they're going to go to this planet, and you're like, okay, we've been here before, we know what's going to happen. And they get to the planet, and then boom, all of a sudden, neomorphs are popping out of dudes' backs, there's gore, there's tension, there's all this stuff, and then the movie comes to a screeching halt, and now we're having another 20 to 30 minutes of two androids discussing creations, discussing life, discussing philosophies, and then boom, we're back into Alien again, and then it seemed like
But see, that's what a nerd I am. I loved them stopping and discussing life and discussing creation and discussing godhood and David's frustration that here we are created in the image of humans, but we're programmed not to create ourselves. I enjoyed that whole neomorph bursting out of that dude's back, the other one bursting out of the other dude's stomach, and all that action stuff, and then going into that philosophical. I don't know. I guess I'm a nerd like that. Like, I love C.S. Lewis, I love Chronicles of Narnia, and I love, like, the philosophies of those kind of things. So I like it when we take our time and get into philosophy stuff. So for me, I get that could be really jarring and annoying. Action, 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 halt. Let's talk about creation. Let's get philosophical. Let's talk about, do we as synthetics have a soul? I can get how, yeah, that's kind of jarring and kind of annoying, but just for me personally, I enjoyed that mix. I like but that's just me.
Well, a lot of that, I don't think it has to do with, nerdism or anything like that at all, because there's a wide spectrum of people who really, really are liking this movie, as well as people who aren't. I think that the difference is the thing that's been the difference between me and you throughout this whole review series is you've watched all these for the very first time this month, and I've been waiting for, the 90s, since the 90s, to have like a rated R gory alien return. So whenever the trailers were promising me that, whenever the posters were promising me that, whenever Ridley Scott himself was promising that, and we really only got that to a kind of a watered down degree in some respects in the last half hour of a 2-hour movie, that's what disappointed me to a degree, because my excitement ramped up to 11 the first time. Whenever that guy was just convulsing on that seat and I knew things were about to get going, I was like, yes, now the movie's starting. And then all of a sudden we got, like I said, 10 to 15 minutes of it, and then it went right back to what was kind of dragging its feet for me a little bit in Prometheus in the first half hour of this movie. So still very interesting stuff. Like I said, and I said this in my review too, it should have been its own thing, I think. The whole Prometheus concept, even the androids and the creations in life, they definitely should have been their own thing. I don't feel like they've really succeeded in Prometheus or in this one of totally meshing Prometheus and Alien together into one cohesive story, into one cohesive tone, and it just feels like, just like it was in Prometheus to me, that two movies are still battling each other. Like you have the scientific side, and then you have the horror science fiction side. So
and I see what you're saying there, because if I was in your situation and I had watched these movies when I was a kid in the 90s and I had those expectations since the 90s, I do suspect I'd feel radically different about this movie, just because my expectations would be in a totally different place. It'd be the same thing as if I was watching all those Marvel movies and they released a series of philosophical, overthinking Marvel movies, and it's like, no. The reason I'm watching this is because I want to see the superheroes fight bad guys. Why are you getting over philosophical, or why are you stopping the plot to go in this direction or that direction? Give me a freaking superhero movie. Yeah. So I can relate to you exactly what you're saying. I think my feelings on Alien Covenant are the way they are because I haven't had these expectations or are waiting for it to be a certain way, because only this month have I been introduced to this franchise.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And the biggest defense that I've heard for this movie, because the negatives towards it seem to be kind of in line with some of my negatives, and the biggest defense I've heard is, well, if you want to watch Alien, then go watch Alien or Aliens. This is a Prometheus sequel, and that would have been fine, but the big misdirection for me is the marketing, because I think anybody can agree they marketed this as an Alien movie. They didn't even give they didn't give hardly any hints aside from showing that Michael Fassbender is in this one, of it even having tales of Prometheus. But that's just how it is. But
well, I mean, like we said in our Prometheus review, we thought for sure this was just gonna, in 10 minutes, gloss over Prometheus and then be its own.
Yeah.
Thing. Like, that was just our view from the advertising. We had no idea what this was gonna be. So
exactly. Now, I had one other question too, because this was another thing that we were really interested in Prometheus, that we kind of wanted a little bit more elaboration on. And with the way that the events of this film go, it doesn't look like we're going to get much elaboration on it. Even though the scene was awesome whenever David basically obliterated that entire planet of engineers, were you a little bit disappointed that now unless there's multitudes of engineer planets that we don't know about, that we're probably not going to find out any more about engineers, why they created us, why they wanted to destroy us, where they came from? Like, all of those questions to me now seem like they were kind of washed away.
I will admit to some disappointment with that. Like, while I was watching the movie, caught up in the emotion of the moment, I thought it freaking rocked.
Yeah.
Walking out of the movie and letting it marinate a little bit, I think I'm disappointed, because my biggest question out of Prometheus is, what did we do to offend you, engineers? Seriously, why do you hate us? Why are you engineering this weapon? Why do you want to unleash the aliens on Earth? What is your deal? And now I feel like we're not going to get their deal, because I feel like this was a definitive, we're just wiping out the engineers. And I feel like that was kind of a wasted opportunity. But in like the emotion of the moment of watching the movie, I thought that was an excellent scene. But thinking about it, it's like, I want to know, why are they so mad at us? What did we do wrong? I want to know more about the history between humans and engineers. I don't know. But yeah, I'm a little sad we're not going to get that.
No, I agree with you 100%. The scene looked awesome, and the whole concept of David coming back to just wipe out the creators of his creators, all that was great, but the missed opportunity of the explanation there was what bothered me. And I also, and again, they might do this in the third movie or the fourth movie or however many Ridley Scott's going to do. I still have no more understanding of what the hell that ooze is than I did at the end of Prometheus. And
I don't either. It felt like it was phase one of, like, what was it, the little parasitic mist it became in this movie? Like, they stepped on the spores and they came up and went into your bloodstream. It felt like maybe it was phase one of that, but I don't know. Yeah, that's the part that it's, again, it built a bridge between Prometheus and this, but a rickety bridge. Like, you got to be careful walking that bridge because it might break.
Yeah.
But there was a bridge, and, like, I don't know what that goop was. Yeah, the goop still felt like an overcomplicated mess for Prometheus. And this one, it just felt like, well, we're just going to upgrade that, improve it, make it a little less complicated.
Yeah, I hear you. So that was the thing that's confusing to me, because in the last one, like, we were curious why the engineer drank it in the first place and what that did to his DNA to put it into the water and what that came from.
And we'll never know that either.
Yeah, and then what the point of this ooze was, when all it really did was create the zombie guy at the end, which that was kind of unexplained, and now all of a sudden it's evolved into spores, and now it's this airborne magnetic filament monster that goes into your head, and now all of a sudden that in 5 minutes that creates a mini neomorph, and then how David was able to reverse engineer that to create all those other things. Like, that's just all the things that is still, like, the biggest thing about this entire concept of this whole Ridley Scott prequel universe is that it just feels like it's so overcomplicated and so overconvoluted that it seems like it should be so simple. Like, if you want to tell a story about how an android felt disappointed in his creations and he wanted to create his own creations and he's the one that engineered the xenomorph, I feel like there's a simpler way to tell that story. And so far, I'm not getting it. Like, I'm 2 films in, and I have more questions now than I did at the end of Prometheus, and I had a ton of questions at the end of that one.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. Like, I do feel like this answered a certain number of questions. Like, I'm happy to know where facehuggers came from and why. I still don't get the giant starfish facehugger in Prometheus, but it was interesting to see how David, through his engineering, engineered it that way. But there's still things that are missing, but
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I think I'll try to wrap up my thoughts. Like, I said this in my review, like, I do think this movie is better than Prometheus because it delivered more of the alien stuff that I wanted when I saw Prometheus. It delivered more of the darkness. It delivered more of a coherent tone. It delivered more of the xenomorphs, obviously, because they weren't even in the first one. But to me, it also frustrated me a lot more than Prometheus just because the stuff that they tried to deliver on in this, they really slipped around on their feet for me. The xenomorph was kind of rushed. The whole process of facehugger to xenomorph was rushed. The whole concept of how they were battling the xenomorphs was a retread of what we've already seen. The whole scene, which is, again, I keep thinking about, like, I just want to see a whole movie talking about how David made all this. Like, that was the fascinating part to me when I got to it, and the fact that they skated past that just really upset me. So,
yeah,
really,
just real quick. Oh, I've been here for 10 years meddling around. It's like, oh, for the love of Pete, how?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm just like, I need more. I need more of that. So I don't know if that was deleted scenes. I don't know if that was his intention or if his plan honestly is to go back and tell the story before Covenant. Who knows? But a lot of the problems I had with Prometheus, I still have the same problems with this movie. Enjoyed it a little bit more for the darker elements that it brought to it. But again, just kind of a beautiful mess of a movie to me. So what's your kind of wrap-up overall thoughts?
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't find it as much as a mess as you did, but as you explain where you're coming from there, I get that. I understand like what your problems are, and I do feel like even though it built a bridge from Prometheus to this, it, like I said, it's a rickety bridge. There's still some questions. There's a few planks missing in that bridge, so watch your step. But overall, like, I did enjoy it. Like, just watching this movie, I don't know where my expectations were. They weren't terribly high. They weren't terribly low, but I definitely got more than I expected from this movie. I did enjoy the spores going into the bloodstream and the alien popping out of the dude's back and things like that. Like, that was a really intense scene, and I just thought this movie did a good job doing the deep thinking stuff and talking about, you know, the engineers. I wish we got more, but we talked about that. But what we did get, I enjoyed. I thought was really cool. It was really cool, the slow unveiling of what happened to Elizabeth Shaw and David, you know, getting this godlike mentality. Things like that were just so interesting, and then right back into the action in that last act with the aliens and things like that. Like, I just enjoyed it. And this scene where David is trying to communicate with that big old white xenomorph that popped up there at the end, and he's like, breathe into a horse's nostrils and he'll love you or something, and then he shoots it, or the captain shoots it. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I like things like that were just really enjoyable for me. So overall, I had a lot that I liked with this movie.
I hear you. I suspect it's a movie I'll probably appreciate a little bit more in a second watch. I think my expectations going in is what kind of screwed up a little bit for me, but that wasn't my fault. That was the marketing's fault. Now, one other thing. Now, I know this is weird after we already wrapped up our thoughts. One other thing that I totally forgot to mention in my review, and I totally forgot to mention here, that they did a lot better in this movie that I noticed. The technology in this movie does look like it comes before Alien.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And I thought that while I was watching it. I was like, this looks like Alien. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciated that because I was like, that was the biggest thing that annoyed me about Prometheus, is it looked like it was about 5,000 years after Alien.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was the biggest thing. But yeah, I figured that was pretty much how it would end up. Is like, you know, there's a lot of things in this that I knew Prometheus fans are really going to gravitate towards, and I think how you view Prometheus is going to really tailor how you're going to like this movie. If you're all about all the new interesting things that they did in Prometheus, you're going to love this one. If you are kind of on the fence or even really don't like Prometheus, it's going to squander your enjoyment in this movie. So definitely know that going into it. Hopefully you've seen the movie before you guys are watching this spoiler talk, but definitely check us out. Check out both of our spoiler-free reviews on our respective channels. Check out the rest of this review series. We've gone through everything from Ridley Scott's original movie all the way up to this new one, Alien Covenant. Durbin, tell us where we can find the odd number videos in that series.
You can find the odd number videos on my channel, Durbania. So just go to YouTube, search Durbania, Durbania. Should be the one and only one that pops up, and there you can check out the Alien reviews. You can check out other movie reviews, both spoiler-free and spoiler talk I've done, trailer reactions. I have this segment where I do a theological analysis and get really deep into movies and plots, and I have a lot of fun doing that. So lots of fun over there in Durbania. Would love to have you come and check it out.
Yeah, definitely go out and check out Durbania, guys. Give them a like and a subscribe. We've got a ton of videos that we've collabed before the Alien series on both of our channels too, so tons of stuff you guys can check out. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button over here, and put all of your thoughts on Alien Covenant down in the comment section below. And if you want to check out some more of our videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.